Hi advanced students, I'm here to go over some camera basics with you for digital cameras to get you back in the mindset of how they work, since for many of you it could have been a whole school year, it could have been just a few months since the last time you handled a DSLR, or it maybe was just last semester. But either way, it's good to start at some of the basics and get those things back in our minds. So before we talk about an actual camera, let's look at the toaster oven again. So here we have the toaster oven with the two dials on it, one for the temperature and one for the time, and by balancing the heat and the temperature, we'll wind up with a perfectly toasted item. So this is very similar to taking a photo using our main functions of our camera, which are shutter speed and aperture. So first, let's talk about shutter speed. What is it? The simple definition is how long light comes in the camera. It's the amount of time. Whether that's going to be a short time or a long time will be up to you, but shutter speed is always going to be related to the amount of time, like the timer on the toaster. The second thing that shutter speed is going to control is the action in our photo, whether it's going to be frozen or blurry, depending on if the subject is moving or if you as the photographer are moving. Second is aperture, and aperture is all about the lens of the camera. It's how much light comes into the lens, the size of the opening in the lens. And that size of the opening in the lens is also going to affect something else in the photo. It's going to control the amount of focus or the space that's in focus. So we have the amount of light coming in the camera over time, the amount of light coming in the camera with the lens, and then we have the speed of the camera affecting the subject motion, and then we have the lens affecting what's in focus. So here is an example of shutter speed in action. So we have 200th of a second here, a very fast shutter speed, freezing the action of the pair. Next to it we have a 15th of a second, which the object is now falling and we can see the motion blur. So depending on what result you want from your image, you can play around with shutter speed to get different effects. Here's a picture of my daughter jumping on a trampoline. This was taken at over 1,000th of a second, and I used a burst mode so that I got many photos rapidly and was able to look back at them and choose the one that was going to work best for what I was trying to accomplish. Okay, here's the complete opposite end of the idea. I set my camera down on a flat surface. I lowered the shutter speed until I got to the point where I knew I was going to blur the action, and this was half a second. So this was very planned out and one frame at a time, trying to get this effect, this cascading soft effect of this waterfall. Back in studio and photography, we all drew with light using very long shutter speeds in the seconds range, 10, 15, 20 seconds long, to draw and create designs. So here is an example of that. So shutter speed can run such a range from freezing action to blurring action to drawing with light. And to select one on our Nikon cameras, when we have the camera set in M in manual mode, we're just going to simply move this thumb wheel. Okay, you're going to roll that back and forth, and the shutter speed will change. You'll see that on your display on the back of the camera. You'll also see that through the viewfinder when you look inside the camera at the bottom of your vision. You'll see what number the shutter speed is set to. So in this case it's 250th of a second. Depending on which camera, they have some slightly different looks to the diagrams on the back, but they all have the same information back there. So some rules about shutter speed. The larger the number, the shorter the time, so it's going to be fast. It's not going to let in a lot of light, but that's when you're going to start to freeze action. Smaller number, more light will come in the camera. However, if your subject is moving, it could be blurry. And then you fall into that category of something that's maybe just not interesting. It's kind of blurry blah. So that could be good for shade, things that don't move. When holding a camera in your hands, never use less than a 60th of a second. 125 is even better because your hands will naturally shake the camera to cause a blurry image. So our home base of around 125 up to 250 is really good for kind of a cloudy afternoon, later in the day. But when you're in full sun or you're trying to freeze action, that's when you really want to push into those higher shutter speeds into the 500 range. When we go on our field trip and we're taking pictures of waterfalls, then we want to go even lower and start going way below 60 into a quarter of a second, a half of a second, and so on. All right, aperture. How to select one. Again, Having the camera in manual mode is where we have control over our settings, and this is a two-step process. You press and hold this little plus minus button here and move the thumb wheel. Actually, next to the plus minus button is this little picture of an aperture. Looks kind of like a little flower, and that's what you should think of. The aperture is like how a flower petals like open and close and like lock together. The aperture in your camera is made out of little metal slices or plastic slices that are going to slide and open and close to create that opening. And same with the shutter speed. As you move the thumb wheel, you'll see this number change. A lot of the cameras, you also see this diagram. So here this yellow is representing how much light is coming in. These little rectangular marks around the edge are representing the speed. So we mentioned before that aperture controls how much space is in focus. So here we have f2, or an aperture of 2, and we have a very blurry background, not much space in focus. And as we increase the number, we're decreasing the opening, and now here at f11, an aperture of 11, we have a lot of space in the background. Let's get rid of that. We have a lot of space in the background that is now in focus, to the point that we can see all of these plates. You can see the fork and knife here on the placemat, where in this first photo it's just completely blurry. Here's an example of an open aperture using lots of light coming the lens, a very wide aperture, letting the background become completely blurry and keeping one subject in focus. Followed by the same flower, same place, now the closed aperture, a little bit of light coming through, and the background now has all these details. All right, so aperture rules. The smaller number, the more light that's going to come in the camera, but the smaller the number means less area can be in focus. So that's good for when you want that background to fall into shapes and fuzziness. So it's good for close-ups, portraits of people, objects, flowers. But if you're taking a group shot or a landscape, that's not necessarily the time to use it. When you want to blur the background, open the aperture. A larger number will let less light in the camera, but a larger area will be in focus. Alright, so we're going to take these two settings and blend them together. The shutter speed, the time, the aperture, the amount of light, and put them together to get our photo. And the light meter is going to tell us how we're doing. So if I look through the viewfinder, tap on the shutter lightly and take my meter reading and see all these marks going in this direction towards the plus sign, that's going to mean plus plus, too hot, too much light is coming in the camera. I'm going to wind up with burned toast, okay? I need to make some changes. I need to raise my shutter speed. I need to close up my aperture. Or maybe I see the opposite situation where all these lines are heading in the direction towards the minus sign. So minus, minus. Too dark, not enough light's coming in the camera. We need to add light, so we can slow down the shutter, open the aperture, and balance those two out. We want to get somewhere in the middle. Okay? Some photographers, myself included, will tend to maybe meter slightly off center and purposely go a little brighter. I tend to go maybe 1 to 2 clicks away from the center before I take a picture, just because depending on what's happening in my image, if there's a lot of dark areas, shadows, I want to make sure I'm capturing details. All right, and here is an example of the back of the camera with our light meter balanced correctly, our camera settings, and then this is the one that you would see through the viewfinder. You have your focal points here that are being locked, and then your shutter speed and aperture. Okay, so in this lighting, using a very fast shutter speed and a somewhat closed up aperture of f10, we're getting a perfect balance with the light that's in this picture. If we were to lower this shutter speed, let's say to 800, then we would have to raise the aperture up a setting. And then opposite would be true. If this went to f8, then this would need to go faster. All right, so it's always kind of a game of balancing the two out. And the My Light Meter app is a really good thing to use to see that, to see all the different pairs. Okay, if you're using a particular shutter speed, what would be the best aperture to go with it, or vice versa. All right, there's a link here in the PowerPoint to a camera simulator that you can play around with and see your results right away. If you want to check that out, you just have to go to the full PowerPoint on the Google Classroom and you'll be able to use that. All right, I hope that clears some things up, and if you have any questions, just leave a comment or send me an email, and we'll be going over some more exciting things tomorrow.